Shalom Israel, Shalom, Shalom. This is Brother Warrior. This is my channel, Rise of Israel. First and foremost, I give honor and glory to the Most High God, Yahweh, in the name of His own begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh being who the world will call God, and Yahweh Shai who the world will call Jesus Christ, right? So today I would like to go into, pretty much biblical history, man. And that's, if I can put it that way, but pretty much proof that prior to the transatlantic slave trade, and even during the transatlantic slave trade, there's traces of Israelites in Africa prior to the transatlantic slave trade, right? So this is pretty much geographical evidence, right? So let's go to the title of the book, which is titled Geographical del Africa by Sanudo. Now, Livio Sanudo, he would be pretty much an Italian map maker, which is around post-Renaissance era. He lived during the time of, around the time of Amerigo Vespucci and Christopher Columbus, men like that, right? The men that really took the voyage into the New World, right? So let's do a little background on who this guy is. Livio Sanudo, born in 1520 he lived from 1520 to 1576, was a Venetian cosmographer and mathematician and maker of terrestrial globes, and also belonged to the prestigious Lafayette School of Engravers, whose output signaled the transition between the maps of Ptolemy and the maps of Mercator and Ortelius, right? So just getting back to it, he's pretty much like a Renaissance painter. He did he made maps, many maps, and one of the famous maps he made was of Africa, right? Now this map took place in around late 1500s and 1588, as it says. And the reason why I'm pretty much going into the fact that he was an Italian map maker was because if you look at the wording, for instance, if you look at Oceanus, instead of a U, it has a V. Now everybody knows that a V doesn't make a vowel sound, but in this context it does, because when the English and the Latin and the Greek come together, a lot of times you have issues like that, right? And we've seen these things. We've seen these things many times, right? Like, for instance, if we have a KJV 1611, you'll see that, KJV, in the book of Matthew 1611, King James Version, right? You'll see that simple words like Jesus looks a lot different in the KJV than it would in the modern Bible. Same thing with the word David. It would look a little different, right? Because here's one rule. When a J, because pretty much the J wasn't necessarily a word in that time period prior to the 1600s, they would use an I to substitute for it, or it would just be kind of obvious. So instead of Jesus, it would be Isis, right? Same thing with David. The V wouldn't necessarily be there, and sometimes when it was a V, it would be interchangeable with a U. But they kind of switch for each other, right? And we're gonna go on and further see why that might be the case, right? So right here, you have Latin pronunciations, and if you go down to when it goes into C for consonants, and number 4, it explains a little bit more what I was saying, right? So it says the English sounds J and V did not exist, right? The Latin letters J, consonant sound I. So J would have a consonant sound as an I. So it would still be J, it would still be a J, but the I would count for both the vowel sound of an I, and then it would have a consonant sound for an I, which we now would know to be a J, right? If that makes any sense. Same thing with the V, right? The V, pretty much, instead of it being a V, it would be a U. But in later renditions of certain words, you'll see the V kind of being brought into it and being interchangeable with the U, right? So like we read over here, when we see David, instead of a V, you have a U here. But in other places, it may have a V instead of a U, as we see over here in this map, a V instead of a U, right? So let's get back to the point. And they both kind of go together, but they're really interchangeable. And I'm gonna go a little bit more into that, right? So right here in dictionary.com, it says this: there was no letter U in the alphabet. Well, that's not the entire story. There was a sound for the letter we call U, but it didn't look like a U. It looked like V, right? So it'd still be a V, but it would still be a U, but it would look like a V, right? Because those two are pretty much allographs. They go together and are interchangeable, right? Given the context. The classical Latin alphabet had only 23 letters, not the 26 that we have today. This is why the W looks like a double V, but it's pronounced like a W. Hear what that said. This is why instead of instead of it being an actual two U's, it would be a double V, because double V and because the V's and the U's would necessarily, they'd be interchangeable, right? And let's keep going. For a very long time, U and V's were allographs. Just look up. Actually, it's going to explain what an allograph is right now, right here. What's an allograph? An allograph is a variation of a letter in another context. Uppercase and lowercase letters are allographs, right? So you have an uppercase J and a lowercase j, they would be allographs, right? And that would be based off context. A person's name, it might be uppercase, and at the beginning of a sentence, it might be uppercase, but it's still the same word, right? And it's just explaining that in Latin it has the same thing, but it'll be a little different, right? So instead of it being uppercase and lowercase, it'll be a U and a V. So a V may be somewhere in the word Vincent, but it'll also be in the word unanimous or bold. You know what I'm saying? So it could be in either or, right? But it's given the context because they're allographs. They pretty much mean the same thing, right? Uppercase and lowercase. Okay, well, before the use of the letter U, the V shape stood for both the vowel U and the consonant V. So the V would be for both a vowel U, like I said, in bold, and a consonant V, like the word Vincent or violin, right? In the picture below, you will see, the letter V and U's in places. And here it is right here. Here's a picture of it. I'm not going to read this out, but you can see that in certain words, it'll have a PV, which we know doesn't go together. So you understand that would be a U. And the same thing with reverentia, where it would be an actual V, right? It has both, right? And the reason why I go ahead and explain this is because if you look in this map, in Central Africa, probably around the Congo, where the Congo would be, or Angola, one of the two, right? It has something called IVDEORVM Terra. Now, I don't know what the first one means. Well, I do know, but I'm not going to, off looking at it, a person might not know. But give away the second one, it just means land. Terra means land in Latin, right? So my point is to go in to see what this word means, because it's a map that's translated from the Latin. What did they call this place in the 1500s? And we're about to see right now, right? So I'm gonna type this in. The IVE. I gotta look at it back. I gotta go back. IVDEORVM. Okay. The IVDEORVM. Right? Terra. Right? Now, as you can see, the Terra translate from the Latin. Mind you, this is a Latin translation to the English. We've just went over a short little class on the translation from the Latin to the English and how things kind of look different, right? So as you can see, nothing's changed with this. It looks exactly as it does in the Latin to the English. But remember, I told you the V's and the U's are interchangeable, and the J's and the I's are interchangeable. And let's see what happens once we do this, right? So I'm gonna start from right to left. I'm gonna change this U. See how it changes the translation? See how the translation changes a little bit? The more we change it, now watch. Switch this other one, and this is where you'll see the change at, right? I'm gonna change this V to a U, and look what pops up. I don't even have to change the first letter. I don't even have to change the I, because it says the land of the Jews. And this is something that I'm not, this isn't some trick or some weird thing. It's something I'm literally doing in live time. It says the same word that pops up in this map right here is this same word right here. It's the same word. I just changed the V and the U. That's why I went through that small little class on the U and V's changing. Let's just change the J just because we're here. See that? Same thing. Nothing changes. The land of the Jews. Judaeorium terror. There we go. See how much sense that makes now? Because right here, it doesn't necessarily look like it's saying anything. And a person that might not be, properly educated of the fact, or might be a little ignorant to the translations, might just, dance by this and not notice anything, right? But this literally says Judaeum terror, meaning land of the Jews. Crazy, right? So that's just one, right? So in the map, in the 1500s, prior to one West Israelites waking up to the truth, things like this, realize we were in slavery on ships. Before we even got to that point, there was people in Central Africa called the land of the Jews, or there was a land in Central Africa called the land of the Jews. How interesting is that, right? Let's get to my next one, right? So not only was that a map that we see, but also in the Library of Congress, which is a government website, there's something called a Negro Land map. And I'm going to read this for you. It says, a new accurate map of Negro Land and the adjacent countries. Also Upper Guinea, Upper Guinea, showing the principal European settlements and distinguishing which belong to England, Denmark, Holland, the Sea of the Rivers, being drawn from surveys and the best modern maps and charts and regulated by astronomers and observers. All right, here we go. Right? And this map was created in, from a span of about almost 100 years, right? So from 1693 and so on and so forth. But it was published in 1747. So as you know, this probably took a lot longer than, maybe about 100 years to make, right? This map right here, which is called the Negro Land map. And we're going to zoom in and we're going to look into it. As you can see, this will be the western shores of Africa. That's the Atlantic Ocean. See that? Cape Verde Islands, right? This isn't written in Latin, as you can tell, or translated from Latin. It's a lot easier to read, right? Negro Land. You have upper or proper Guinea, right? You have the Gold Coast. You have Benin. You have the Gulf of Guinea, the Kingdom of Benin. But right somewhere very small on the Gold Coast, you see something that would catch somebody's eye if they were looking. That probably wouldn't catch somebody's eye if they were even looking for it. Right here, where it says the Kingdom of Judah on the western shores of Africa. Right? Very interesting. So just a little far west of the land of the Jews, you have the Kingdom of Judah. Both played huge roles in the transatlantic slave trade, which would lead us to the Americas, right? Now, this isn't all I have to go into this, but it's something to look very interesting. It's very interesting. Again, prior to us even realizing that blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans are Israelites, we have information like this that proves that the so-called black man that was brought over here on ships were Israelites, or were Jews specifically. That's the important part. That's the interesting part. The Jews, right? But this isn't the only place this was where this is seen in. If you read a book that goes by the name of Salakia, From Babylon Timbuktu, you have something in page 84. It explains how this came to be, right? And it says in the second chapter of page 84, it says, in the year 65 BC, the Roman armies, I don't know if I can zoom in. Okay, the Roman armies under government Pompey captured Jerusalem. In 70 AD, General Vespasian and his son Titus put an end to the Jewish state with great slaughter during the period of the military governors of Palestine. Many outrages and atrocities were committed against the residue of the people. During the period from Pompey to Julius, it has been estimated that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa. Now, a person may say, oh, that's pseudo science, that's pseudo information, whatever. But there's two verified maps that show that there were Jews in Central Africa and Jews in West Africa during the slave trade and prior to the slave trade, right? But it says that over 1 million Jews fled into Africa, fleeing from Roman persecution and slavery, right? The slave markets were full of black Jewish slaves, right? And it just goes on with the prophecy as it says right here. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have ever known, even when a stone, right? Even when a stone, which is which would be the cross, which would signify the wood, and the stone, which would signify what they would call the cobblestone, which would be a symbol of Islam, right? We will worship other gods, and that's what you see happening, right? But this is something that we know that we were going to see, because even Christ talks about this, right? In Salakia, in the book of Luke, chapter 21, in verse 20, it says this, because look, where were they fleeing? They were fleeing from Roman persecution, and they fled into Africa from Roman persecution, right? So let's keep going. It says this, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Right? So this is pretty much Christ telling us, look, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, which armies are they going to be compassed with? How about the Roman army that's going to come in there and try to kill them? Right? Pretty much flee, leave, get away, go, flee into the mountains. Right? So let's keep reading. Right? So let's verse 23. But woe unto them that are with child, and unto them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. Right? And here's the point, verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword. Who's going to fall by the edge of the sword? The children of Israel. And shall be led away captive into all nations, which is according to the prophecy. Right? And Jerusalem shall be trodden down to the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Meaning until Gentile rulership is over, the children of Israel will be cast away and will be in slavery to all nations. Right? And that's what you see happening. Shortly after, not shortly after, but sometime after the Jews fled into Africa, you see slave trade start happening in Africa. Now Africa is this big melting pot for slavery. I'm not saying every African's an Israelite. By no means necessarily am I saying that. But I'm just saying where the Jews fled to in the many multiple slave trades that you see. Whether it may be the Silk Road slave trade, the Sub-Saharan slave trade, the Ottoman Empire slave trade, all of which took children of Israel from Africa and from the Western shores, and the transatlantic slave trade, of course, and from Central Africa, like Congo, and even from West Africa. Right? You see constant slave trades happening. If you do the research, you'll find it. Right? But it's something we see constantly over and over again. Right? That they would be cast into slavery. They would be brought into these other nations, and this is direct prophecy. Because it shows, look, the children of Israel will be, they fled into Africa, and then later on, you see Christ let them know that we're going to be pretty much thrown slavery into all nations until the time of Gentiles be fulfilled. Right? Now, the funny thing about this, the Jews fleeing into Africa is not a foreign thing. It's something that the Israelites have pretty much always done. Right? And I can grab this in Jeremiah 42. You know, now I'm just kind of shooting from the hip right now, so bear with me. Pretty much explaining everything, right? Matter of fact, look, yeah, I'm gonna read this and I'm gonna go to another one. Here we go. This is the truth. I can go to verse 10. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go to 41 on down. All right, here we go. Right now, I'm gonna start verse 14. So all the people that Ishmael had carried away captive from Mizpah cast about and returned, and went into Johanan the son of Korah. This is Jeremiah 41 and 14. But uh, but Ishmael the son of Nethaniah escaped from Johanan with 8 men and went into the Amorites. Then took Johanan the son of Korah and all the captains of the forces that were with him, all the remnant of the people whom he had recovered from Ishmael the son of Nethaniah from Mizpah. After that he had slain Gedaliah the son of Ahikam, even mighty men of war, and the women and the children and eunuchs whom he brought again from Gibeon. And they departed and dwelt in the habitation of Chimham, which is by Bethlehem, to go to enter into Egypt. Now, if you don't know anything about Egypt, Egypt is like the door to Africa. And the Jews, is multiple occasions where the Jews fled from Jerusalem, fled from the land, and they fled into Egypt. Now, into Egypt would be taking you into deeper into Africa, if you know anything about that, right? Because of the Chaldeans, they were afraid of them. Because they were afraid of the Chaldeans, they fled into Egypt. What did they do when they were afraid of the Romans? They fled into Egypt, right? So let's grab another account, right? Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 2, and verse. Here we go. Verse 6. And thou, Judah, okay, we already know that. Let's go to verse 7. It says this, Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star, when they had saw in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. Okay, I'm trying to get to the point. Here we go, right? Verse 12. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way, right? And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. Right? Hear what this is about to say, because this is very interesting, right? And hear the allegory. Herod is going to come to destroy the young child, take the young child, destroy him. So where did the young child go? He fled into Egypt, right? When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Right? Now, just to end this off, not to, this video took a lot longer than I expected. Let's go to the book of Revelations. Let's go to chapter 12. Right? And we start verse 1, right? It says this, And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and with the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. This is symbolic of something, right? And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered, right? Now, this is similitude for Israel, right? And let's keep reading. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. If you read Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, you'll know that this dragon is talking about the Roman Empire, right? Verse 4, and his tail drew the third part of the stars, and did cast them into the earth. The third part of the stars would be the Jews that kept the law, statutes, and commandments. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered. So this dragon stood before the woman, which is ready to be delivered. Who is this dragon symbolic of? Let's keep reading. For to devour her child as soon as it was born. This is symbolism for Herod wanting to kill who the world will call Christ. It's a similitude for that, right? But let's keep reading. And she brought forth a man child who was to rule all nations with the rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Right? Now look what happens to this woman. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Now, what's so interesting about this? Where's the wilderness at? The wilderness is literally between, I wouldn't say, but it's between right before we get to Jerusalem and coming from Egypt. That's where we were at when we were on our way to Jerusalem, or to our land in the first place. So we were fleeing back into Egypt, as we did before time of old. So when you read things like 1,000,000 Jews fled into Africa, of course they did. That's the comfort zone. That's where the Israelites are known to fleeing into, especially coming from Roman persecution, someone coming from the north, right? But that's pretty much it. But I want to grab one more precept, just because prophecy, showing that prophecy happened, and that prophecy is going to continue to happen. And if you are found worthy, you'll be able to see these things come to pass, right? This is Baruch 2:30. It says this: "For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people," right? "But in the land of their captivity they shall remember themselves." Meaning, in the land of our captivity, we're going to remember that we're the children of the Most High God, and we got to keep God's laws, right? Just like almost every Israelite that we know of right now, we woke up in the land of our captivities. We woke up in Babylon the Great. We might have woken up in London, in France. We might have woken up all over the place. But we woke up in the land of our captivities, the vast majority of us, of course, right? And we all remembered ourselves. We remembered the ways of our forefathers and the things that we used to do, the laws, statutes, and commandments that we had, and we're going to go to keep them, right? Verse 31, "And shall know that I am the Lord their God, for I will give them an ear, and give them an heart and ears to hear. And they shall praise me in the land of their captivity," which we do, "and think upon my name, and return from their stiff neck and from their wicked deeds. For they shall return the way of, they shall remember the way of their fathers, which sinned before the Lord." And that's what we've done. That's prophecy being fulfilled. So we already see prophecy being fulfilled in us right now, realizing that we are the children of the Most High God. But then we see geographical proof of us being in those lands, to which it said that the Jews fled. So the Jews fled there. Then prophecy is fulfilled of them being brought into Egypt again on ships. And now the scripture says that they're going to wake up, which we all identify with. So how can we be the people of the Most High God, right? And shall know that I am the Lord their God, for I will give them an ear and heart and ears to hear, and they shall praise me in the land of their captivity and think upon my name, and return from their stiff neck, meaning keep God's commandments and keep the faith, and from their wicked deeds, for they shall remember the way of their fathers, which have sinned before the Lord, right? Because that's the reason why we're here. We're in a position, right? "And I will bring them again into the land which I promised with an oath unto their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they shall be the Lord's, they shall be lords of it, and I will increase them, and they shall not be diminished. And I will make an everlasting covenant with them to be their God, and they shall be my people, and I will no more drive my people of Israel out of the land that I have given them," because we're driven out of the land until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. That's how far we're going to be out of the land. Now, again, I did bring up how we were brought to the Americas, which everybody knows by means of transportation. But just for anybody that might not be familiar with this, Deuteronomy 28:68, it says this. It says this will be a curse that pretty much will fall on the children of Israel, right? "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee," right? So the Lord is going to bring us back into Egypt. What is Egypt? Egypt is a bondage. It's bondage. He's going to bring us back into bondage again with ships. "By the way whereof I speak unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies." So we were sold to the so-called white man for what? For bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Meaning bondmen and bondwomen is like a slave man and a slave woman, and nobody was there to redeem us, right? But who the world really calls Christ is going to redeem us, right? And that's pretty much what we have to look forward to. That's just a simple precept going through everything. We can even go to verse 46 to show you that this is something that has to happen to the children of Israel, right? Verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon you, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, which we are, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. And that's exactly where we're at right now. These curses, including the curse of Deuteronomy 20:68, is upon us for a sign, which is a signal, which is an identifier for who the children of Israel will be in the last days. Not only is that an identifier, but the fact that, we'll be led into captivity to all nations. That's also an identifier. The fact that we would be the biggest mockery of every nation. The fact that our sons and our daughters would be carried away captive. The fact that we'd see people coming into our land and taking things from us, and then coming into our land and being better than us, right? Speaking of the so-called Hispanic and Native American, right? And I know I'm kind of long-winded with it, but I'm gonna grab one more precept. Matter of fact, I'll grab two. This is Jeremiah 3:18. It says this: "In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given them for an inheritance unto your fathers." Now, the land of the north is what you would call Babylon the Great, or just simply called Babylon, right? And that's where you have both tribes in, because in ancient Babylon, the northern kingdom and southern kingdom weren't there. But in this new Babylon, Babylon the Great, we'll be there together, which we are, in the Americas together, right? And last precept in Jeremiah 16, and here we go. Verse 14 says this: "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them, and I will bring them again to their land that I gave to their fathers." But with that, I'd like to give all the glory to the Most High God Yahweh, and name his own begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. Lord willing, this edifying video. I didn't mean for it to go too so long, but that was the way of the Spirit. I like to bid everybody strong shalom, Kwame Shawala. Stay diligent, stay strong, keep the faith, keep the commandments. Kwame Shawala, shalom.